And going on that, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, who is a founding member of the Workers' Party of Britain, currently on the political committee, and now works at the Workers' Party of Britain's head office in Birmingham. I'd like to welcome Peter Higgins, who has spent 10 years in China, first as a student and then as a translator, and originally happens from Belfast. Let's please give Peter a warm round of applause.
Thank you, everybody. So my name is Pete Higgins. I'm here representing the Workers' Party of Britain. First of all, thanks to the Marx Memorial Library for the use of the space. Thanks to Keith for the gracious invitation, privileged to speak here today, and thanks to Fiona for being such a capable chair. It's a thankless task usually. Asked here to speak and to listen to the history of the Korean Revolution. Well, there have been speakers, and I'm sure there will be a speaker much more knowledgeable and experienced in this area than myself. But one thing that I can focus on, and one thing that I want to pay tribute to, is something that Keith just mentioned there, something that shows the ongoing success and the ongoing strength of the Korean Revolution under the leadership of the Workers' Party of Korea. That is the support, diplomatic and military, that Korea has shown to Russia in the course of the special military operation. Beginning even before that with the recognition of Crimea as part of Russia in 2017, and the recognition and defence of the Russian peoples of Donetsk and Lugansk, and then of course with the deployment of military personnel, especially crucial to the liberation of Kursk. This is a tremendous show of solidarity and sacrifice. Russia has been at the sharp end of NATO provocation and encroachment, and as Keith has intimated as well, could quite easily have been left to fight that entirely alone. It is tragic that the necessity for military resistance to NATO expansion continues unabated more than 3 decades after the disbanding of the Warsaw Pact. It is equally tragic that it takes these circumstances, sanctions, economic isolation, military confrontation, to reforge old allegiances and to forge new allegiances anew. In the 3 decades since the fall of the Soviet Union, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, like Russia and China, has fought hard and struggled successfully to maintain its integrity, its independence, and its sovereignty. At a time when NATO and the imperialist nations, under whatever guise they choose, have been on the warpath, when they have thought they could run roughshod over Eastern Europe and the rest of the world, Korea, People's Korea, thanks to its weapons program, thanks to the Korean People's Army, and most of all thanks to the leadership of the Workers' Party of Korea, has defended its sovereignty in these most bitter of circumstances. Well, now, in 2025, NATO must know that the glory days of the 1990s are long gone. It is the sacrifice and solidarity that Korean military personnel have made in the special military operation that tangibly shows the end of the post-Soviet unipolar world order and the long overdue emergence of a new multipolar world. This is the promise of a world in which the tiny cohort of imperialist nations, under whatever guise they choose, can no longer, in the guise of a defensive pact, isolate, impugn and undermine the sovereignty of other nations with sanctions, with colour revolutions, or, like in Yugoslavia, with bombs. This year also marks another auspicious 80th anniversary, that of the victory over Japan in the Second World War. What thoughts must have gone through the mind of Mark Rutte and his colleagues when they saw the images of Kim Jong-un, Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping celebrating that anniversary together in Beijing. Well, I can tell you clearly what thoughts went through my mind when I saw those images. It was a paradox, but certainly not an unwelcome one, to be and to feel both chastened and emboldened simultaneously. Chastened because the sight of these three leaders, leaders of nations who many of us here deeply admire, nations whose efforts to maintain their integrity, independence and sovereignty have not come without sincere sacrifice. The sight of these three leaders taking the world stage together should remind those of us here who would resist imperialism here in the belly of the beast that our efforts have hitherto been inadequate. Likewise, it should embolden us in the course of our daily work, when things so often feel like one step forward, two steps back, or even worse than that our brothers and sisters across the world have been through so much worse and have achieved so much more. These two feelings go hand in hand. They are two sides of the same coin. It is not simply to feel demoralized, nor should it be to merely enjoy and celebrate vicariously the successes of others, where ours are so sorely lacking. Rather, in my estimation, the greatest tribute that one can pay to the lasting success of the Korean Revolution and to the leadership of the Workers' Party of Korea is to redouble our efforts here and to make sure that imperialism has no easy role, has no easy path in Britain. In Britain, what we see today, old party allegiances are crumbling. New parties will be pushed by the establishment to soak up discontent on the right and on the left. The working people of Britain, for their part, have never been more disaffected, disillusioned, and disinterested. But for the working people of Britain, this represents a step forward. It is not a step back. The word apathetic is thrown around about the working people of Britain. Political apathy, voter apathy. But people used to look to the future in tea leaves. They used to perform rain dances to avoid drought. But we don't call people now apathetic fortune tellers or apathetic rain dancers just because they don't do those things anymore. They just realize those things don't work. Likewise, the British working people are not apathetic. They have just come to the correct conclusion that the old state of affairs wasn't working. Never has there been a more important time to speak to British working people in a language and in words that we can properly understand. To explain the financial and spiritual toll we all pay for NATO membership, to explain the witch hunt against imagined enemies like Korea, Russia, China, etc. To explain the price that British workers pay for imperialist war and exploitation overseas. And to explain at a time, as Fiona has hinted at earlier on, this is a time when working class patriotism and nationalism is being abused and misused, as it so typically has, at a time when working class patriotism is being expressed through the ersatz hanging of flags on lampposts, that there is in fact a rich seam of British people's history that is well worth being proud of. From the peasant uprisings to the Luddites to the Chartists to the general strike of 1926, the miners' strike, Jaya Ben Desai, etc. Many of these materials will be held in these premises that we're in today. There's a lot to be genuinely proud of here in Britain as well. So the lesson that I believe that we have to learn as sympathizers with, as admirers of the Korean Revolution, is that we must redouble our efforts on our own shores to raise the knowledge and develop the organisation of working people here. And this is the greatest tribute that can be paid to the Workers' Party of Korea here on the celebration of the 80th anniversary of its founding. Thank you very much. Oh, yes, and Keith has thankfully reminded me of something that I promised him I wouldn't forget and then did forget. Another project that I'm involved with in Birmingham is the Birmingham People's History Archive. This is an archive and library of social history, trade union materials, socialist groups, and the broader anti-imperialist and anti-colonial struggle, including significant materials from People's Korea itself. We've also been in kind receipt of donations very recently from the Marx Memorial Library, and we are organising in December, on Saturday, December the 13th, a day in celebration of VJ Day, of the 80th anniversary of VJ Day. That will take the form of a full day's worth of activities in Birmingham. And if you check our website, is probably the best and most convenient way to do that, bpha.online, or speak to me afterwards. But that day will include a showing of the film The Sinking of the Lisbon Maru. We have a speech from Keith Bennett as well. He'll be coming to Birmingham for that. And also we will have a question and answer session with a fellow called Don, who was interned as a young man in the 1930s in China by the Japanese, and we'll have a question and answer session with him as well. So it should be a good day, all things considered, and a nice way for us to round off our events before the Christmas break. So thank you very much, guys. Thanks again.
Well, thank you so much, Peter, for that wonderful sort of analysis of the historical significance of all the events going on in the world today. For seeing Comrade Kim Jong-un, Xi Jinping, and Putin together on the world stage. We're really sort of seeing the tectonic plates of the resistance movements against imperialism, against the current world order coming together, and it's incredible to see the People's Republic of Democratic People's Republic of Korea's place in all of that. It's very important, I think, for us to think about, exactly as Peter has said, is that we have to look forward. We have to think of the events of the world today, no matter how depressing and pessimistic and horrifying they may be, is how do we utilize the material conditions, the social conditions of today to find a way forward, to move ourselves forward as the working people, as the people who determine our own fate and our own future. So I think it's incredible that we have so many actually young people here in the room today, because we form the next generation of people who will take on the struggles of our ancestors, the struggles of the many revolutions talked about and represented here today, including the struggle for Korean self-determination.